Hello and welcome to the Publicly Challenged Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Oswald, and I hope you join me on my quest for knowledge to become a better public land hunter, angler, and forager. Stick with this and who knows, maybe we will learn something together. Okay, so I'm sitting here with Jesse Akosbek, and Jesse, welcome back to the show. It's good to have you back on.
Thanks so much. I'm happy to be here.
So could you introduce yourself for everybody listening that may not have heard our other episode or know who you are?
Yeah, definitely. So my name is Jesse, and I run the foraging education platform, Feral Foraging. So I equipped people with the tools and knowledge that they need to become better, more responsible, and more effective foragers.
Wow. That's a lot, but I like it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
what are these tools that you equip people with then?
So a big thing that I am always trying to do is to help people find the first step for foraging. For someone who, especially now, one of the cool things that's going on is that there's a lot of people who are sharing about foraging, who are educating about foraging, who are inspiring people about foraging. So I think more and more people are getting interested. But, the classic thing is, the most classic is, well, I'm afraid that I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to eat the wrong thing and I'm going to get poisoned or, whatever the thing might be. So I try to make a lot of material for bringing people in the door and saying like, hey, here is how you get started with foraging. Here is how you avoid that situation of finding something that you didn't know what it was and you accidentally had something the wrong one or a poisonous lookalike, and dispel that whole thing and help them to know the lay of the land. I guess the best way to say it.
I find the more I get into foraging, and it was daunting when I first got into, I felt overwhelmed, didn't know where to look. Carried books with me sometimes. A lot of times I didn't. And then it's like, oh, what was that? Oh, I can't remember. You take a picture and the picture's not as good. But now with like apps on your phone to like cross verify, I don't ever trust apps, but even like the iPhone has a thing where you can click on it now and check it. But if I think I know what that plant is, or I'm like 95% sure, and then I take a picture of it and it tells me the same thing, I'm going to believe that. But I still want to verify somewhere else. It's not like I always just try and go, oh yeah, that's this and this is what it told me, because it has been wrong. I'd say about 50 to 60% of the time wrong. You know? So it's like, wait a minute. And there's been times where I ID'd something and also saw it on there and it said it was something else, and I'm like, I don't think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you overcome that fear or overcome that? Because for me at first it was hard until I kind of started actually learning entire plant families and things that like in the mustard family, if it's got 4 petals, right, and it's got 4 stamens tall and 2 short, it's anywhere in the world you can find that plant, and all of a sudden hey, this is a plant, it's edible, it's in the mustard family. And like that makes so much more sense to me now. But I didn't know that, didn't understand botany, didn't think I'd ever have to learn botany or Latin names, right? And now all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, okay, if I know the Latin name and it's like the genus or whatever of that Latin name, typically that plant tends to fall somewhere in that category, and now all of a sudden things are falling in place. But how do you get people to overcome that fear?
Yeah, so really quickly, for people who are listening to this and you heard about the 4 long stamen and 2 short stamen, look for that. Like it's one of those details that is small, but when you look closely at it, it's so obvious. And I think that those are some of the coolest things to find. Like another one is the next time that you find a tree that maybe you look at it and it looks like a cherry tree to you, look at the base of the leaves and you'll see these 2 tiny like spotted kind of glandular structures. Those are called extrafloral nectaries, and they are there. They secrete nectar, so they're there to attract insects and pollinators to the tree. Tiny details like this.
Those are on the
those
leaf?
ones. Yes, at the base of the leaf, kind of on the petiole. So the leaf stem
Okay.
leading to the structure of the leaf. Yeah.
Interesting.
And there is a particular detail between American plum, Prunus americana, and Chickasaw plum, Prunus angustifolia, that Prunus angustifolia has those glands present, but American plum does not. So that's one detail that you can use to distinguish them. And that situation of, one has this, the other one doesn't, is present. There is at least one detail present in every situation of any, quote, lookalike or similar looking plants. There's at least one detail, and usually many more, well, always many more details to go by. So another one would be poison hemlock versus wild carrot. Well, wild carrot has hairs, poison hemlock has no hairs. Wild carrot does not have purple splotching, poison hemlock does have purple splotching, and so on. There are many other details that we could look at. Now, for beginners, if you're just getting started with a situation like that where one of them is not just like a little bit toxic, but potentially deadly toxic,
Yeah.
it's a good thing to keep on working on your plant ID skills. So that's a big circle to go back to the original point that we started on, which is, and I would say in relation to the plant ID apps. I use plant ID apps every single day. I use a naturalist. It's my favorite because it's also kind of like a community of people who are identifying things and comparing what other people are finding and helping other people identify. And it has the features of, it will suggest to you from the pictures of, we think that it might be this thing. Okay, great. So that is what I think the best use of this plant ID apps is it's going to give you a usually decent first guess. If you have no idea what it might be, it's going to kind of put you in the right direction. From there, we use fundamental plant ID skills and details and start to go through a process of elimination. So the two that I always teach people, the very, very first things are, for plants, leaf type and leaf arrangement. So two common types of leaves you're going to come across. One is compound. So think like pecan leaves, hickory leaves, or Virginia creeper, poison ivy. Those are all actually compound leaves made up of individual leaflets. So the trope about poison ivy leaves of 3, leave it be, it's actually leaflets of 3, but we'll give them a pass on that one. Versus a simple leaf. So something like dogwood or cherry, where the whole structure, that one part that looks like a leaf, that is the whole leaf.
Cottonwood. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then going on from there, then we go to arrangement. So, for instance, sumac has compound leaves. Elderberry has compound leaves. They can look relatively similar. Elderberry has oppositely branched compound leaves. Sumac has alternately branched compound leaves. So those two details, if you are wanting to start to learn the fundamentals of plant ID, so it's not just like, well, I know what dandelion looks like, I know what clover looks like, but I know what it looks like, and here's the reason why. I would recommend starting with those two. We get our first guess from the Plant ID app, and okay, great. So this plant that I'm looking at, well, it has oppositely branched leaves. Here's the first suggestion. Well, that one has alternately branched leaves, so well, it can't be that. And then the next one, and maybe it's something like, well, that one has hairs all over it, and this one doesn't, and you just keep on going through those set of details. Two more that typically come right after arrangement and leaf type would be serration of the edges of the leaves. So if you look at the edge of a leaf, it'll be smooth. Sometimes they're jagged or serrated. And then lobing. And this is a term that I thought was more common, but I made a video about talking about wild carrot, and I was talking about the lobing, and everyone was saying, like, what is that? What does lobing mean? So lobing is, the best way that I can describe it without using the term lobe would be the way that there are divisions in the leaf. So if someone could imagine a maple leaf, imagine the Canadian flag. I'm born in Canada, so All right. uh, the maple leaf on the Canadian flag is a lobed leaf. So there are parts that come out from the center, and then there are spaces in between the outer extending lobes of the leaves. And then other leaves, like cherry that we talked about before, are unlobed. Sometimes the term for that would be that they're entire. So those are 4 details right there. We have leaf arrangement, leaf type, serration, and lobing. And already right there, in most cases, unless you're dealing with a very specific thing like within a genus, are probably going to get you to the genus of the plant that you are looking for. And then, you just keep on going from there.
Yep.
The order that you do these things in it's helpful to go in a certain order. For instance, we were talking about those glands at the base of the leaf, the extra floral nectaries. That's not the first thing to look for, right? We don't right off the bat say, well, does it have these or not? So we're going with the details that all plants share, the broadest ones, and narrowing it down. If you want to know how to identify any plant, then the biggest thing that I recommend, and this goes for mushrooms as well, is to find good dichotomous keys. So those are those really nerdy things that you might find in a field guide. And yes, using field guides is awesome. Oh, and we'll just throw out a plug, by the way, for Sam Thayer's new field guide, which just came out.
Does that have? I didn't even notice it had a key in there. Did it?
So it's I've been digging through. I haven't gone through the key
I've just
parts
been
and
flipping
details.
through chapters, like looking at stuff and
But
memorizing pictures that I don't know. But
right. So the way that I got it right in front of me, so I can use it as a reference. So for instance, a section will be this section that I open it to: basal leaves present, stem leaves alternate, lobed or divided, sap milky. Okay, so those are a set of broad characteristics that we'll be looking for. This sounds like dandelion would be an example. Dandelion has the basal leaves, so it kind of forms that rosette.
Yep.
Those are present. The leaves on the stem will alternate. They are often lobed or divided, toothed, and the sap is milky, right? If we break the stem of dandelion, it exudes that classic milky latex. And we can go to another section. Let's go to one where the basal leaves are absent. Yeah, here's one: flowering stem leafless, basal leaves toothed or lobed. So, these are all just different details. And I would say that if one wanted to be really serious about, they find a plant and they're like, okay, well, where am I going to look in Sam's book for this? Is to learn what those details mean. So then you can be like, okay, well, it's got this thing, this thing, this thing. I need to go to this section.
Yeah.
And that's really going to start to supercharge your plant identification and foraging journey.
So, dichotomous key, mushroom books, All That the Rain Promises and More, I think is the name of the book. I can't remember the author, but some weird looking guy in a tuxedo, like a Pee Wee Herman tuxedo on the cover with like a saxophone or a trumpet or something. I can't remember, but that book has an amazing key in it, and I've actually used it to ID. Yep, that's it. All That the Rain Promises and More. And who's the author on that?
I just pulled it off of my bookshelf because this is a really, really great one. David Aurora is the author of this one.
Yes. And so that book is amazing. I've used it to ID mushrooms before, and it's super easy to just follow the key and go, okay, yeah, this is it. No, it doesn't have a veil. Yes, it does have this. It does have gills. And just follow that list down until you can narrow it down, and then you get to color of spore print. And then it's as simple as that. Okay, now I know what this is, And
keying mushrooms is something, or identifying mushrooms is something that is still very new to me. I'm really comfortable with plants. If I find any plant, then I'm confident that if I don't know what it is, I know the steps to figure out what it is. With mushrooms, I'm still learning. But I've been going through the keys of like a book like this. Another great resource is mushroomexpert.com. Has fantastic keys that are freely available. You could go to that website right now and have access to those keys. And yeah, it's going to tell you, you're looking at some guild mushroom in front of you. I have no idea what this is, but it's going to be asking you, what is the spore print? Does it have a cap and a stem or does it not? Was it growing on the ground? Is it larger or smaller than this? And so on. And the way I think about it is, if we start off with just a huge box with all the possibilities of what this thing could be, if you just throw a dart on the board, that's your chance of getting it right. And we just keep on dividing that box into smaller and smaller parts until now, okay, I can actually look through, let's say, these 5 or 10 specimens that it could be.
Yep.
And then, get your positive identity.
Today I was in the yard and I was looking in the edge of the woods, and I was like, what is that plant? I don't know what it is. I was like, did I put that there? Or is it something that is growing? And so through identification, right, the first thing I do is I look at it, notice it has alternating leaves. Then I ID the stem and go, oh gosh, that's got a square stem or square-ish stem, right? And I'm like, okay, alternating leaves, square stem, it's got to be in the mint family. What the heck is it? There's no flowers or anything on it. So then I start searching through pictures to ID the leaves, and they're very long, like taper down to almost a teardrop on the leaf. And I go, okay, that's giant hyssop. Had no idea what it was, but through those characteristics was able to identify what it was. And so now I know when it flowers, it'll be giant hyssop.
Yeah. I think you meant opposite.
Or opposite. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Opposite leaves. Yeah. Good. Thank you for the correction on that. But yes,
definitely.
Yes, they were alternating in pattern to where they're opposite of each other stacked.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Oh, there's a botanical term for that, and I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a botanical term for everything.
Yep.
But the pattern where it's like they're going one way out one part of the stem and then further up, and they're going the other way, so they're perpendicular to each other.
Yep. So yeah, it was giant hyssop.
Awesome.
And I wouldn't have never known that if I wouldn't have learned the characteristics of the mint family. So
the book, oh shoot, what's the name? Botany in a Day. Yes. Is another really fantastic one that I recommend to everyone.
Thomas Elpel.
Because yes. Who is going to be, I believe, at the Midwest Wild Harvest Festival this year.
You mean the thing I don't have tickets to?
Yeah, which is sold out, unfortunately. I heard it sold out very fast.
2 hours or less than 2 hours is what I heard. But so
yeah,
are you
I had my calendar. I had a reminder ready to go. Like that morning, that was what was on my mind. I'll be going this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. Cool.
Yeah, I must have. It was early that morning that I signed up because I had a feeling they talked about how fast they sold it the year before, and all this stuff is only getting more popular.
Right.
So
yeah,
I just got lucky.
And that's okay though. Maybe one year I'll get up there again and make it happen. But now it frees up my September for ricing or whatever else I want to do. So
yeah, and that's a cool one that I have not ever experienced myself before, but I got to see Sam's video about it, of the whole process, and that was really, really cool to watch.
Yeah. So what what's kind of your plans, and what are you looking forward to IDing or trying to teach other people to ID? I know you just did a plum video. I saw it on social media. It was pretty cool. And you talked about those glands. Is there anything else that you're super excited to get out and try and look at?
Right now, like this time of the year?
Yeah. Yep.
Definitely. So yeah, this is it's almost kind of an in-between time right now. So we're just exiting like the true springtime of the year. And for reference, I'm in North Alabama. So my season is going to be far accelerated from people who are further north of me. So down here, we're exiting the real springtime foraging. So all of our nice tender shoots and stems have gotten much more mature, and so they're not quite as good eating anymore. And we're getting into more of the summer fruit season down here.
We're actually
similar
here in in the central. area of the United States in the Midwest. We actually, spring beauties are pretty much all gone. The ramps
Hmm.
have pretty much started to yellow. Um, we're coming near the end of ours for sure. So we're kind of with you, which is weird because normally you guys are way ahead, but it was like we had full on summer weather, a cold snap, and now we're back into full on summer weather again. Morels are done. They're
Yeah.
if you find them, they were even dried up during morel season this year because it was kind of a dry start, and so those were pretty dried up too, which is kind of weird for us. But yeah, so we're kind of with you. But normally, what do you guys have? Three growing seasons is kind of the as far as like modern agriculture. There's about two or three down there.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's somewhere around April 1st is our last frost date. So yeah, it's we have a long or we have a short cool season. Like for a lot of cool season crops, like lettuce, for instance, we don't need to start our warm season crops. Also, like for reference, I'm a gardener, so this is
Yeah.
just like what I've experienced in my garden.
Right.
I'm not an expert in this, but from what I've seen, we need to start our cooler season crops like lettuce much more than our warm ones. We got plenty of warm season for tomatoes and cucumbers and squash and things like that, but a relatively thin window for really nice growth of colder ones like lettuce and kale and crops like that.
Nice. Yeah. So anyway, though, you're getting
Yeah.
into your away from the tender shoots, all that stuff, and now you're getting into the summer fruiting.
Right. So just yesterday, I was getting to check out some land with a friend of mine that he is purchasing, and it's right up against the border of national forest that's here in Alabama. So that was really cool. So we were going around, and then we went up to a gravel road that's going through the national forest. And by the way, so early on in my foraging journey, I had this idea that you go in the woods to forage. And for the more mature forests around here in North Alabama, in the woods, there's no food. Very, very little food. Like
Except
if
for
I want to look
animals.
for, yeah,
Right.
except for animals, exactly. Uh, but even for the animals, I don't, other than some browse, they're not going into the woods for their food. You want to be looking for places where there's more sun. More access to sun is more energy. More energy means more ability to produce things like fruits and nuts and berries and so on. So we were going along this gravel road, which, cuts out a bit of the canopy. So there's nice sun access. And right there was a beautiful red mulberry. So the native mulberry tree that was just full of fruit. Unfortunately, we were on a very tight time scale and it was too high up in the tree, didn't have a tarp with me or anything. So it would have been very difficult to get to harvest them. But mulberries all around us, both red mulberry and white mulberry, are getting close to being ripe. Some of them are ripe already, if in ideal conditions. Was out there and saw all of the elderflower, which is out. So that's one that I really look forward to every single year, whether it's for the flowers or the berries later in the season. And what was the other one? Oh, so I don't always get these, but some years we can get a good crop or a good fruiting of black cherry. That one's kind of inconsistent, and it's really hard to find a good spot for it. But when I do, I can get a fair bit of black cherries. These are not large grocery store cherries by any means. They're very tiny. They don't always taste very good. Like they taste a bit more medicinal, so to speak, but they make amazing syrups with. So that's
So
another fruit.
like bigger than choke or hackberry or
Around a little bit bigger than, like about the size of really large hackberry.
okay. All right. Yeah, that's pretty small.
Yeah.
Is it a
Yeah.
thicker flesh or is it pretty consistent with like regular, you know what I'm saying, as far as like size, relative size? Obviously if it's smaller, but the flesh is a lot more. I mean, there's very little flesh on a hackberry, but the black cherry has a lot
Oh,
a lot more flesh.
yeah, much more than a hackberry,
Okay.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
like, the seed pit is going to be much smaller. I mean, you know, like it feels like eating a cherry a really small cherry, but yeah, I think because they're so small and you're dealing with all the tiny pits, I think that a better way to use them would be something like syrup or jelly or wine or juice, some use like that.
Yeah. So how do you make your juice? Are you like a steamer guy, or what do you utilize to get the?
I haven't done that yet, but
Yeah,
I want to try.
I haven't done it
So
either.
I don't make juice very often, so to speak. I'm usually more making things like syrup, jelly, or wine. That's
Okay.
typically what I'm making
And
more
if you
of.
do your jellies, you still have to strain it somehow, right? To get all
Right.
the, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. The only one that I don't strain is I make rose jam, where I leave the petals in. And the
Interesting.
invasive rose that we have here in Eastern North America, Rosa multiflora, the one that grows all over the place, it has the white petals. And here's the cool distinguishing characteristic. So the what is it? The stipule. So the part where the stem of the leaf meets the main stem of the rose vine is going to be very bristly on Rosa multiflora, the invasive one. And most, if not all, of the native roses that we have in Eastern North America do not have that feature. So there will be a little bit of hairs on the stipule at the base of the leaf, but it will not be bristly the way that the invasive one is. So, there's another one of those characteristics to go by. But I rip up, as many of those petals that I can find, and I'll remove the plant if I can, if I'm in a space where I can do that. And making a jam with the rose petals, it's divine. I think it's
Really?
delicious.
With the
Yeah.
petals. Okay. So then that's like adding the petals in, infusing the water, and then pretty much sugar and pectin, or using natural pectin. What do you?
The pectin's added for
Okay,
that one. I
pectin's
mean,
added. Yeah.
you could use another wild fruit to get the
Yep.
pectin if you wanted,
Like
and
crab
then
apples
an
or
acid
something.
of
Yeah.
some kind as well. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Because I was. Have you ever done anything with like the hips then, as far as making jams or jellies or anything with that, or no?
I haven't I haven't done that use with them before. No, I've made tea with the hips before. Unfortunately, in the ones that I found down here for the rose hips of the invasive rose, they're just too tiny and tedious to gather a meaningful amount of them.
Okay.
So I haven't. I've done it just to try it, but I haven't got to do it in a really meaningful way.
Yeah. I just pick them and nibble on them. Like
Right.
trailside nibbles. Uh, One time last hunting season, I was in a spot. It was dark. Climbed up in the tree. Knew I got snagged on something on the way up. Looked down. Oh, hey, there's some multiflora rose right there. And then when I got down, filled up my pockets and was just eating them on the way out. But uh, I've never actually collected enough to do anything with. Even with teas, it seems tedious to collect enough of them to make teas to dry them. I've actually just bought bags of them before.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it
yeah,
is quite tedious. Yeah, a note about the invasive plants thing, because that's been another popular topic lately, and I'm glad it is because it's something that we all should be talking about more. I always argue that I think foraging is one of the greatest things that people can do for the environment, for their local ecology, for them to build that relationship with nature. It is inevitable that you will begin to care about it in a way that you never realized was there. And one of those is caring about especially the native plants that you are foraging for. You want them to prosper, you want more of them. And invasive plants, the thing about them, because you'll see them, and yes, they will have bees on them, they will have other pollinators. Those bees are typically, or and often, honeybee, European honeybee, which is another, I'll say,
yeah, not
non-native
necessarily
insect in
invasive,
eastern.
but non-native because they
Right,
bring
yeah.
them for, yeah, for honey.
And I think the big thing that is often missed is that, one, invasive plants displace native plants. Like that's why I would use the term invasive to them. Not just that they're here and they're not from here, but they're here and they grow in an aggressive pattern where they're displacing other plants around them, Privet is a great example of that. Honeysuckle is an even better example of that. And then you have plants like honeysuckle and I think tree of heaven also are what's called allelopathic. I think that's the right term. So they put chemicals in the ground to suppress the growth of other plants other than themselves. So, I mean, around here, if you have really bad honeysuckle thickets, there's nothing.
Yep.
There's nothing but honeysuckle. So we have the direct displacement of native plants. We don't like that. In addition, there are many native insects that have an obligate relationship with certain native plants. The most famous of those is probably the monarch butterfly, which has to have its young eat on milkweed. It doesn't have another choice. And that is not the only example. There are many other examples, like passion flower is another one. There's the Gulf fritillary butterfly, and then there's one other that has to eat on passion flower or passion fruit vines. It needs that as its food source. So not only do we get the displacement of these native plants, but that in turn causes population decline in native insects, which, are fundamental parts of the ecosystem. And then it just keeps on running up the chain. So it matters a lot to me. And as a forager, I have milkweed in my yard that I'm growing and planting because, hey, it happens to be great for my local ecology. Also, many of the species can produce edible parts that I can have too. So it just leads to more of a win-win situation. And I think it leads to people being more of advocates for their ecology, how it is already. It doesn't need anything else. It's good the way it is, and we need more of it. And yeah, I think that's a really great thing about foraging.
Yes. No, I agree. I believe anytime anybody gets into nature and becomes a participant of nature and actively is there and builds a relationship over time, as they start learning and identifying different things, they realize the importance of how of everything and how delicate it is once they're a part of it. And I think foraging, hunting, fishing, that's when people really start to care. If you're just a casual hiker and you just say, "Oh, look how beautiful this is," but you don't take the time to identify these plants. You don't take the time to stop and look and see what's actually around you and how it's growing or thriving or becoming more scarce, then it doesn't matter to you. But it's when you become a forager, a hunter, and a fisherman that or fisherwoman, whatever you want to say, but that's when you realize all these things and how important they are. It's because now you're a participant, you're actively in that setting and learning it, and that's what changes. And it's great just to, no matter what, to get people into that role, and whether it be through foraging or any of the other avenues as well. And to get those people to come together on those things is an even better thing because, like you said, how it develops or the ecosystem and it turns into insects. Well, guess what? Those insects turn into wild turkeys eating those insects along with all the different plant species as well. And then you start to see a decline in turkey populations or decline in fertility of the turkeys. And then the next thing you know, it affects that and it affects other things because now your predators have less food. And it's a vicious, vicious cycle that we all need to be aware of. And I think it's awesome that you bring that up and you mention that because it is a great thing to get people into that.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's just everyone has a part to play in this. And as we lose more and more land, not everyone has a backyard, but hey, if you do have a backyard, then a great thing to do with it is to make it a little haven for the native plants that are local to your area. I think that's one of the best things that you can do.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing. A lot of people, especially because on the show we talk a lot about public land, but
Hmm.
the private land stewards, or even if you have a small portion of land, like you mentioned, being able to make a safe haven for those butterflies or native bees or anything like that has a massive ripple effect that people don't realize. The same thing with people who manage their land for white-tailed deer and create an ultimate habitat. Well, those deer aren't only going to be on that land. The ground around it and the public land and everything else flourishes too, which gives greater opportunity to people, and that's super important. And then, um, like I've been trying to do that around me and start planting in my yard different things that bring in pollinators and all kinds of stuff like that. And trying to, rather than plant my sunflowers, plant native sunchokes and just things like that. That once they go, and the thing is they take off and they flourish once they're given an opportunity. But it's been destroyed, and so recently my big quest is to eliminate a lot of the invasive honeysuckle and actually driving copper nails in it, because I've tried cutting it down and even grinding the stumps, and it doesn't work. So now I'm killing them all the way, hopefully down to the roots, with a bunch of copper nails driven in them.
Yeah, this is one of those that it's a controversial subject, but I am an advocate for the use of things like herbicide as a tool where it's applicable. So triclopyr, and again, I'm speaking of, I've done light research on this, so just be aware of that. But with these tools, it was massive human uh use of humans using fossil fuels that got us in a situation where our environment is in such a strange situation in the first place, right? Traveling all over the world, everyone. And so we can use the tools of the modern world to help us with the situation that we find ourselves in. So I'm not a fan of the broad use of herbicides like glyphosate just to douse the whole field or anything like that. But if we're talking about being able to have efficient and effective uh, taking care of things like honeysuckle or privet or tree of heaven, hey, I'm all about that, especially with specific targeted ones where it's not affecting the ones in the area around them. I'm doing more research on this right now, but one of the utility companies that's near me they have an interestingly pro foraging take on their regulations. So if they have land that they own, they say, as long as you are being responsible, you are not damaging or degrading the land, we're okay with you foraging. And their use of herbicide is also interesting to me. They talk about it on their website. Under power lines and things like that, they're not just spraying the whole thing like crazy, because it sounds like they're recognizing that's just a continued problem. Like we just always have to do that. Instead, what they're trying to do is to target shrubs and trees that are going to grow very tall and very large and create a problem for access. They're only targeting those because they want the herbaceous plants to take over and flourish. The more that they do, the less that it's work for them to deal with the shrubs and trees. So I would love to see more things like that,
Yeah.
right? To me, that's prairie management in a way, and I think that's really cool. And more of it would be a really good thing.
Yeah. There's actually, when you say that, in the use of herbicides, I think it reminds me that honestly, I think somebody took and ripped out landscaping and dumped it in one of the parking lots of one of the trailheads that I like to go to and utilize on some hunting ground. And it has taken over English ivy to the point to where it's choked out anything native that's on the ground that would be there. And it's actually wrapping itself around some of these younger trees, and it looks like it's going to choke out some of these trees. It used to be a spot where you could find ramps, you could find all kinds of different things that are not there anymore. It's just gone and devastated the whole area. And that's one of the, like, where I think the application of that would actually be, useful. I try not to do it on my own property because I still like to forage and pick things. I know people
Right.
utilize kill sticks and stuff like that to where it's actually just the topical application directly to the plant after they cut it. It seems like a pretty practical method there, but there actually needs to be the broad use of some type of herbicide to kill off that ivy, because it's actually taking over and killing everything.
Yeah, this year I've been at war with the English ivy in my backyard as well. And what you're talking about, yeah, when a lot of these plants are just facets out of our own activities. When we just clear cut a field for whatever it might be, or if we destroy part of a park to make it grass or whatever, invasive grasses, not even native grasses, then yeah, we're reaping what we've sown, but we can sow something different. So
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what um like I don't even know the avenue to go to try and approach somebody, but it seems like it's getting out of control, and it's like you don't want to take something on public land into your own hands, but it's getting to that point where I want to protect that area, and it's getting that bad to where I need to get a hold of somebody for sure and try and get that rectified. But so let's get back. We kind of got sidetracked here a little bit
yeah,
talking about
definitely.
invasives, but um, what other methods or anything are you like? I know you're actively doing a lot of stuff and the native landscape and restoring it. What kind of avenues are you doing to try and um, one bring like more attention to it and try and get more people involved in that?
Yeah. So, one of the big things, like I said early on, is I'm trying to get as many people as I can to take the first step. Right. So I have a whole article. It's literally called "How to Start Foraging," and what I try to give you is like, here's the whole map. You don't have to have the whole map written out, but like here are the big points of interest. So here's how to do it safely. Here's how to do it responsibly. Here's how to get started with plant identification and mushroom identification and so on. And yeah, I try to share about that. Another thing that I try to do is and it's kind of like my like stream of consciousness social media, because I want people to know about what's going on right now. So I do my best to, this is in North Alabama that I'm sharing my stuff. And I'm like, hey, here are the plums and here's the stage that they're at right now. Here are the service berries and here's the stage that they're at right now. So that people around me, or for those north of me, and it sounds like we're, kind of equal in terms of timing at this point,
Except for
you
the
can be
elder
like, oh, well,
flowers and
that's cool.
stuff. I think
Yeah.
we still have a few weeks for that, but
Yeah.
that's pretty close, which normally we're not that close. Normally you guys are way ahead, light years ahead.
Hmm.
As far as like
We,
even morels and stuff like that, normally when you guys have them popping, I'm like, oh yeah, next month we'll have them. But
one of the cool things that you get from it just keeps on compounding year after year. So, I take pictures of all the stuff that I'm doing. So I kind of have a log. And from previous years, we seem to be about a week to 2 weeks behind where we normally are in terms of timing on things popping up. And yeah, there's also just kind of like spring roulette. So this year, plums were amazing, but black locust was terrible for black locust flowers. It's one of my favorite things to
I
forage
haven't
for.
found any. I've been looking, but I have not found any yet.
Yeah. And the year before, plums was terrible and black locust was amazing. And so it's just all in the timing of how the spring freezes go.
Yeah.
Whether or not the flowers were able to get pollinated and set fruit before another freeze hits. And, but this year's a good one for plums. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Nice. Make some. You're gonna get a juicer this year?
I don't know if I'll get a juicer. Edible Illinois, he commented on one of my videos about the plums and he said, oh, you have to make umeboshi. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And that's a way of preserving plums where you're kind of packing them into salt. I'm still
Okay.
researching this, but that's something that I'm really looking forward to giving a shot.
So almost like fermenting it into something, right? Is
Yeah,
that what it would do? I
I
mean,
don't
would
know
it?
to what degree it's fermenting, but yeah, it's kind of making, I'm guessing, like a sweet and savory
Hmm,
treat.
interesting. I'll have to look into what is it again?
Umeboshi.
Umaboshi. Okay. Yeah, that's
That's
something I'll
my attempt
definitely
at the
have to look in.
pronunciation.
And that's fine. It's good enough for me. So, Jesse, if somebody wants to get into foraging and read your article, how to get into foraging, where would they find that? Where are they going to find you? And where are they going to find your awesome content on social media? Because it is pretty good. I think I honestly see more of your stuff pop up on TikTok for some reason than Instagram. The algorithm's kind of screwed up there, but can you tell us where to find all that?
Yeah. So yeah, I would love, if you are interested in foraging, I would love for you to read that article. It's called How to Start Foraging. If you go to feralforaging.com, that's feral like feral cat, Feral, foraging.com. akosbek.com, then you'll be able to find my article on the website. And yeah, if you're interested in videos about foraging and identifying plants and how to use them, I share all of them on social media, mainly on YouTube. You can find all the stuff that I post on YouTube, articles and posts and videos and so on there, as well as, if it's a social media platform that you're on, I probably post it there as well. So Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok, you can find my stuff of your preferred social media platform.
Perfect. Jesse, it's always awesome talking to you. I always look forward to it. Thank you so much, and we'll have to have you on again for sure.
Thanks, Luke. Absolutely. Appreciate it.
And once again, thank you so much for listening to the Publicly Challenged podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, please subscribe on whatever platform it is you're listening to. Also, if you could leave a review, that would help us out. And you can check us out on Instagram or at publiclychallenged.com. And once again, thank you so much for listening to the show.